And so what you have here is Jesus saying, in effect, I'm going to take Satan's domain where he lives, the Lord of the dead, and I'm going to turn it into his own tomb. I'm going to empty the place out. Again, I have a lot to say about this in Unseen Realms, so I'm not going to rehearse all the content here. But this is Peter's confession. Now, when Jesus came into the district of Caesarea Philippi, and we'll look at where that is geographically in a moment, he asked his disciples, who do people say that the Son of Man is? And they said, some say John the Baptist, others say Elijah, and others Jeremiah, one of the prophets. I mean, everybody's guessing. He said to them, but who do you say that I am? And Simon Peter replied, you are the Christ, the Son of the living God. And Jesus answered him, blessed are you, Simon Bar-Jonah, son of Jonah, for flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my Father who is in heaven. And I tell you, you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell, again, if you hover over ESV, it has a little note there, gates of Hades, this is the underworld, shall not prevail against it. I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven, whatever you bind on earth, so you bind in heaven. Binding and loosing is actually a reference to exorcism. I spent a whole episode of my podcast on that. If you wanted to get into that content, you can just listen to the podcast. But let's go back here. What we have here is a location of Caesarea Philippi. It's known later, I mean, it's known by a number of names where the confession, the Peter Rock, passage occurs. It's also known as Banyas or Panias, the Grotto of Pan, later on in Jesus' day. This references to my book on demons. It's associated with Baal in the Old Testament. Adjacent to this, there was a Baal cult. Baal is Lord of the dead, the underworld. This is Baal's role in Canaanite religion. So you have a matrix of ideas here. You also have, Bashan is actually an important term. Let me just show you a map here. We'll get into some of this material a little bit later in other sessions of the class, so I don't want to skip ahead too far. But here's Caesarea Philippi at the top. This is where this scene occurs, also known as Banyas or Panias. You'll notice, again, Galilee, this is upper and lower Galilee on this side. On this side, this whole region, actually going down, it includes Edrei and Ashtaroth, is not on this map, but this whole region is Bashan in the Old Testament. Okay, here's Ashtaroth, Edrei, Sea of Galilee. This map, let's go back to the first map. Here's Sea of Galilee, here's Edrei. If we go down a little bit, Ashtaroth, Edrei, this is all part of Bashan, okay, in the Old Testament. This is the region where Joshua and Moses went up on the other side of the Jordan, heading to Bashan to what? To get rid of the last vestiges of the giant clans in that area, the Rephaim. This is their turf, or was their turf in the Old Testament. So if you take a look at this, Caesarea Philippi, there's the rock. Okay, when Jesus is standing in this place, and he says, you're Peter, and upon this rock I will build my church. This is the Grotto of Pan. This is Banyas, Panias. Okay, this is, in their thinking, both in the Canaanite world, Ashtaroth and Edrei were gateways to the netherworld. This is, again, adjacent to a cult of Baal, the god of the underworld. This is what he's talking. It's hard to miss the rock. Okay, if you're standing there, upon this rock I will build my church. Basically Jesus saying, I'm going to reverse death. I'm going to be the cure for death. I'm going to turn Satan's dominion, the Lord of the dead. Baal-Zebul, the New Testament term for Satan, it means Prince Baal. Baal-Zebul. He is God of the dead, Lord of the dead. This is why Baal, becomes a Satan figure, because Satan, as the result of his rebellion, is Lord of the dead. Everything dies. Everything winds up on his doorstep, as it were. And Jesus is saying, well, I'm here to preach the kingdom of God, and upon this rock, I'm going to build my church. And the gates of hell are not going to be able to withstand it. Now, you might have noticed the subtle difference in my translation there, and I'll show you why here. Because this is the place, upon this rock. Again, it's hard to miss. Now, ESV has the gates of hell or Hades shall not prevail against it. This is a screenshot from the interlinear that I use in Logos. You'll notice against has no, right here, against it, it has no Greek word. That means in the English translation, against it isn't really based on the Greek text. There is no preposition here that means against. That's a translator attempt to capture what's in the Greek. Rather, there's a better way to translate this, and that is the gates of hell will not be able to withstand it. The verb used there, stand against, it can also be withstand, and then you don't need the preposition. The gates of hell will not be able to withstand it. And so what you have here is Jesus saying, in effect, I'm going to take Satan's domain where he lives, the Lord of the dead, and I'm going to turn it into his own tomb. I'm going to empty the place out. And if you were faithful to Yahweh in the Old Testament, you are not, you're going to be delivered from death. Okay, this is your reward. You're going to be delivered from death. If you're a follower of me, because I am Yahweh incarnate, and you align yourself with me, your believing loyalty is with me, you will not have everlasting death. You're not going to be in the realm of the dead. The curse of death is reversed for you. And he goes to the gates of the underworld in his ministry in Bashan, which, as we'll find out in a later session, was also associated with serpents, place of the serpent. He goes to Bashan, which is already associated with the underworld and Baal and Zeus and Pan and all these, these other deities, and says, it's going to be right here, right on top of the underworld. I'm going to overturn, I'm going to bury the underworld. I'm going to nullify it. I'm going to reverse it. He picks this place to say these things. And so it's significant. The conversation is significant against the backdrop that the disciples have in their head about this place. They know what it is. They know its history, both Old Testament and more recent. And Jesus takes them to this place to have this conversation because he's the one who provokes it. Who do men say that I am? And then, they get a few answers, and who do you think I am? Peter says, thou art, you're the Son of the living God, which is significant as well. I mean, if we could rabbit trail on this too. John at one point, Jesus gets into a debate with the Sadducees who deny the resurrection. They want to know, they ask him some stupid question about, a woman gets divorced 7 times, like whose wife is she? Basically to make fun of the resurrection talk. And Jesus looks at them and says, you do err not knowing the scriptures or the power of God. And he quotes the Exodus 3 passage. The I am that I am, the burning bush. And he says, God is the God of the living, not the dead. He's the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He is the God of the living, not the dead. You know what that suggests? It suggests that Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob are alive. This is from Jesus' own mouth. There's just a lot of this stuff going on in the Gospels that it's targeted rebuke. It's targeted theological rebuke. But to appreciate it, again, sometimes you need to know the setting and the theological backdrop to it.